is okay. Righty ho, lovely stuff. I believe the old stream is going. So let me just drag up some notes real quick. I'm very sorry about the squeaky chair today, but we're going to have to just roll through that one. So first of all, welcome. My name is Matt Ball. I am a bass player, guitarist, songwriter, and other stuff. I'm here to talk to you about the bass guitar today. So, it's going to be quite an interesting one. I'm currently watching the stream as we're doing this, and there's about a 10-15 second delay for me, so do forgive me if your questions come through a little bit late. But yes, we should be all good to go. So, today we are going to get a little bit nerdy, possibly a little bit philosophical in places, but I will try to stay on topic. So we're going to cover a few main areas. First of all, I want to talk about technique. So typically kind of fingerstyle technique when it comes to bass. Like I do a lot of things like double thumb, slap bass, and predominantly play fingerstyle. I don't use a pick on bass that often, and I want to go into reasons as to why I don't, particularly in the style of music that I play, and why fingerstyle is good. Why it's good for bass, it's good for the sound, and it's good for more traditional playing. I'm also today would like to talk about being adaptable in the music industry. Now, obviously, the music industry is undergoing a massive transformation at the moment, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what I've done over the years and sort of how that's pushed me in certain directions, particularly when it comes to doing things that are out of your comfort zone, or doing stuff that you've never tried before, stuff that you'd, maybe at one point in time say no to, or think twice about how it is often a good idea to just say yes to these things. So we will get into that in a while. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about bass in songwriting and approach to part writing. So that's going to be fun. It's a massive subject to cover, so I'm going to leave it more open to questions. So kind of open the floor up to you guys, discuss sort of my principles about writing bass for my own music, for the projects that I'm in, how I go about it, and different ways that you can go about it as well. But certainly if we have any bass players or arrangers, songwriters in the audience, I'll leave the floor open to you to ask any questions about bass arrangement and how these things go. So first of all, I'm just going to look at the chat real quick and wait for you guys to come by. So I want to see just who I'm speaking to, if anyone is an actual bass player, or if you're just a musician, to see who's listening. I might be able to tailor what I am speaking about a little bit closer to you. I'm seeing someone is complaining about the intermission music. It's very quaint, isn't it? Okay. I'm not seeing anything come up yet. Right, well, I'll leave chat for a little bit, and I will get on to my first topic, and then, I'll come back I'm going to play a couple songs today as well. I'm going to play some songs from the bands that I play in, my own material as well, so that should be quite fun. So let's make a start. First of all, I thought I could talk a little bit. I do who I've played for over the years. So first of all, I play bass in a metal band. They are a UK deathcore band, sort of on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but playing bass for them was the first thing I really did that propelled me into this. Before joining that band, I wasn't a bass player at all. Hadn't picked up a bass, hadn't played bass in a band, so it was an entirely new experience. And from playing in that band, I went on to play with a guitarist and French metal band Uneven Structure as well, who I play live for sometimes, who are very, very, very sweet guys. But that is a little bit about me. Through playing bass, through necessity, bands and projects and do these kind of things, I had to carve out, not necessarily a niche, because it's, I guess a lot of bass players, particularly in the modern metal scene, do this nowadays, but they will incorporate double thumb technique and slap technique. And I just wanted to show you a couple of principles about this technique, because it is very interesting and can open your bass playing up to a world at all different levels of dynamic and stuff. It's very tricky to get hold of, but when you do, it's, like I say, it's very, very fun. A pick in metal, but I kind of do sometimes. Now, if you're a producer or a mix engineer, recording engineer, whatever it is, you'll know that if you record rock and bass playing with a pick, you may think is sometimes an essential, because you get a much more consistent controlled dynamic out of the notes that your instrument produces when you use a pick, or rather you can, particularly for the metal sound, where everything, very produced, very consistently has a loud dynamic. But you can, I suppose, not replicate, but you can kind of imitate these similar dynamics through good fingerstyle technique, I found. I guess I better just get on and show you and stop waffling. But the thumping technique really does just come down to the use of your thumb in a downwards. Do this quite a lot on guitar if you're a technical metal fan or anything like that. Guys like Tosin Abasi from Animals as Leaders, he's a pioneer in using this particular technique. But I think people have been using it for many, many years, but it's just sort of become definitely more of a technical metal these days. So yeah, the main principle is you're kind of using your thumb in a downwards and upwards motion like that to produce notes. And you can kind of see that, if you would have a pick, playing your bass like that, and you can kind of recreate that with a similar amount of attack with your thumb. So you can produce two, even one swing of the hand, really. And when you've sort of learnt this first stage, you can then go on and incorporate your fingers. So you'll do like, you can do the down up. Let me actually pick a string to do this on. And then you can make a group of 3 by incorporating your index finger. 4, which is harder to do on bass than it is guitar, but not for Evan Brewer apparently. So you get groups of 4s and 4s. Now, I'm just going to bring up my screen here because I can turn sideways. There we go. And I can show you guys a little bit of what it looks like down here at the actual. So it would be something like, you see how the joints in my hand here are kind of straight, and I'm using this joint of my finger that when my thumb comes up from the second stroke, I can with it to produce extra notes. So it's very, very interesting. All very interesting stuff. Right, I've just seen chat and I've seen a couple of you come through. So Chris Fry says, "Hi Matt, I'm a bassist, keen to hear your advice. Good looking wood. I hope, yeah. Thank you very much. Very, very nice. It's good to know there are a couple of musicians that I'm going to be able to nerd out with. So, fingerstyle. We've gone over the basics of thump now. We kind of know this. Obviously, it's a lot of drilling and a lot of just like sitting there for hours being like just really trying to get it in the muscle memory, because it's a quite a difficult thing to do. But this is very cool, because if you're wanting to go, particularly in a metal setting, let's say if you had a passage goes between picking and fingerstyle elements by using your thumb. So you could go from a passage that's perhaps like, and then of course you've got this really heavy attack, and you've got the rest of your digits open for use, so you can be doing your down and ups. That kind of thing. So really it's all giving yourself more options, more voicings, and kind of making your life a little bit easier as well, especially if, as I say, you do want the sound of heavy attack, and your fingerstyle isn't quite, because that is quite a particular sound. Obviously, is the sound of a finger hitting a string is certainly different. May not sound like it. I know, like how those two things did just sound very similar, but they do definitely produce different dynamics and an overall different sound. So let me just check my my order of things here. Right. Okay. So yeah, I guess that was a very brief covering of slap and thump style. Obviously, I'm saying it's good to incorporate these things when playing fingerstyle. Should I play fingerstyle bass when pick bass is just infinitely more consistent and aggressive? And I guess it again, this is something that depends on the genre of music that you play. But I certainly find that dynamic control and appropriately is something that's really important. Particularly going between the different pickups. You can obviously get a very laying up near the neck, and you can kind of control things a little bit more by playing further down towards the bridge. Travel up, start to add a bit more attack to my notes. They get much more aggressive toward, and kind of get woollier and more defined, softer, even lower I get. So incorporating all of these things together that really can, give you a nice, varied vocal. It's definitely an advanced instrument that you can do quite a lot with, as opposed to just, obviously you can play root notes. You can absolutely play root notes. That's still a valid expression of the bass guitar. But if you're trying to do something more, if you're playing music that calls for more elements to it, incorporating these things, can certainly expand your bass related horizons. There we go. So I suppose I'm going to open the floor up to any questions. Like I say, I'm going to get a bit of everything instantly. But while I wait for your questions to come in, I thought I might play a song. It could be quite fun. So I'm going to play Frost Hill from Uneven Structure. This is so I'm just going to grab this session up here, and hopefully you guys will be able to watch this, and it will be all good. And we won't encounter any technical hiccups whatsoever. We're going to be... Right, here we go. That's great. I'm just going to turn my mic off so we don't get all the room sound. let's have a look. I've got a couple questions coming up in chat from Lounge Bar Alton, and while I read those, I'm just going to drink a little bit of coffee. Oh, microphone. Ooh. There, let's put that back on. That's a bit better, isn't it? Lovely. So I've got a couple questions in chat. I'm going to drink some coffee and read them. Having played that song, could you talk through the bass technique decisions you made in terms of playing some? So, I'd say, particularly with this music and this band, it actually varies from night to night which parts I decide to do fingerstyle, and it very much comes down to performance. Now, if you're a performing musician who plays quite technical music, you probably will have encountered this problem where, you know, you're very enthusiastic about what you're playing live, but you have to sacrifice a certain amount to kind of, I don't know, throw down, you know, to be energetic, to perform, to, you know, do your headbangs and your stage kicks and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes you'll be getting so into a performance that you're really flashy. But it's all about deciding what takes precedence. Like, as a unit, does that section of music as a band, is it more impactful if you're all there really giving it your all, or is this an appropriate moment to take a step back, be less energetic, and focus more on your technique, whatever it is you want to execute? So, yeah, I mean, there's some sections. So the I guess, what was the main section? So there was one section which is quite a breakdown on the triplet side of things, is there? That kind of thing. So when I heard that on the record first, because I didn't play records, but I listened to their music quite a bit, so I was quite familiar with the kind of rhythms and song structures that they use. But when I heard this section, obviously it was a picked section, and I heard it and I was like, I can adapt that for double thumb, and it will sound sick. You know, it was a conscious decision that I'd made when learning the material to be like, I really think that section. On a bass, I can absolutely use a pick and play that section like. You know, and it does have a sound to it. It definitely has a sound to it. It doesn't sound, you know, any worse or better. It just sounds different for sure. And I think if you are predominantly a guitar player, perhaps, who is the familiarity of being able to use a pick into those open notes there, with the kind of notes and the open notes, the being able to have a pick and palm mute on those dead notes, and, you know, let the open notes ring out a little bit more. It's very familiar, and it's very easy to control if you are a guitarist like that. You know, coming down for those palm mutes. It's very, very familiar, but as I said, that could be easily recreated. Obviously, with bass, you're on a longer instrument that is just generally more resonant and will be prone to having more, you know, vibrations, more kind of noise that you don't really want there. So for this kind of thing, I'd say left hand muting is a massive thing that you really just need to employ, especially when doing sections like this, because, you know, I can lift off open note when I'm thumping. Thankfully, because of the nature of the technique, it will shorten the notes, make them quite dead anyway. But if I do that without, you know, putting my fingers on the fretboard, there's just so much like resonance to the other strings ringing out, clamp down and mute. It can produce the same kind of sound. Some may argue even more percussive, and I will, I'll talk about sort of once of this technique a little bit further down the line. But let me make sure I've answered all these questions before I move on. You guys are being brilliant and asking things, and I really like that. So yes, to answer that first question, I think it's all about the visualization of how I'm going to perform the song that will decide on what kind of technique I will use at the time, and change from night to night depending on how energetic I'm feeling, how much you want to give it on stage. If you're really just feeling like you want to blow off some steam and headbang, so be it. Switch to fingerstyle, switch to... let me have a look at another question. So it would be interesting to know if there was a choice between A and B. Yeah, okay, that was... Yeah, I think I answered that. Yeah, I think so. With the double thumb technique, do you have any tips for the thumb upstroke? Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. And when I was learning this technique, this was absolutely the thing that got me the most in the beginning. The trickiest thing to get a hold of. When you can do a solid upstroke in between the downstroke and being able to use the rest of your fingers on the way up. So, when you can get a solid downstroke and a solid upstroke, then you'll be able to incorporate the rest of your fingers. So it is very important to get the upstroke right. The most important thing would be the rigidity of the thumb. I suppose it's kind of where your thumb is. Use different areas of the instrument to actually pull off from. They for myself, it's the neck pickup. I try and get it on the angular part, and I will try and land the center of my thumb about there, just on that, and it kind of keeps my thumb at a nice height to the point that when I go through a string, I can push that one down and kind of come up. As you can see, when I come up, my thumb obviously relatively loose until I need to come up, but it's that effort of quickly tensing your thumb and being able to bring it up. But I think it's this angle in particular. Don't worry if you can't go the full, what is it, crazy 90 degrees or whatever it is. You can do it with a thumb, and I think I actually do it with a flat thumb sometimes, depending on what kind of section I'm doing, what strings I have to go to. But certainly if you're just focusing on getting the attack from a single string, then the kind of tensed muscle, I suppose the best way to, because you have to have a right amount of tension to it. You can't over yourself, and you can't have it too loose to the point that you're going to get no attack. So I guess you ever try to do the kind of claw thing with your hand, where you try and point your fingers upwards, but you kind of curl your fingers inwards at the same time, if that makes sense. Yeah, I do a similar kind of thing, but do it with your thumb. Kind of push your thumb out. I guess I'm not sure if this is easier or more difficult for the double jointed community. But yeah, that's certainly the most important thing. So, just to recap, that is the hand after your downstroke and being able to just kind of come up. So you can normally see this, my nails are quite short at the moment because I've just cut them. You can normally see on my nail there is a weight, because that's typically where my contact point is. So I normally pull off using the kind of right half of my thumb there. So I'll go down using this sort of kind of that strip of hard flesh that runs between your knuckle to the tip of your thumb. If it's not hard or not calloused rather, that is fine. You can working it through gently day after day to form up the right amount of calluses to do this, because it can be super brutal on your hands, particularly when you move into the territory of using your other fingers and playing just slap style in general. You are going to get a lot of blisters unless you are a carpenter. Any other really rough, heavy-handed job, you are going to get a lot of blisters from this. Okay, let me just have a look at the chat again real quick. For part writing from other styles of music other than metal. Yeah, I suppose. I'm not really. I say I'm not a metal guy. I am definitely a metal guy. I love metal music. I think it's brilliant. But I listen to a lot of different music. I'd say I'm more inspired and informed by the progressive side of things. I talk about progressive music in every aspect, from sort of the early British wave of progressive bands, progressive rock bands, people like Genesis and Yes, Rush, Geddy Lee. All of these kind of bands are a massive influence on me and my playing. I think because of the nature of the music, it's incredibly well arranged, and because it's so well arranged, supportive instruments like the bass guitar have to do a lot more music around it, if that makes sense. So I think I was kind of drawn to and have a natural affinity towards that style of music, because I think I just like things to be more technical than they need to be. Certainly, pop music as well. I absolutely love how bass is used in pop music in a more contemporary style. I think it's super interesting, especially sort of modern chant pop music. I hate using that word chant, but it is a good way to describe it, because you'll get everything. You'll get the electronic tracks with synthesized bass, and then you'll get more funk style tracks, rock and R&B tracks that use real bass, and it's very interesting to see how that instrument has kind of evolved to occupy this space. Let's say an orchestra, for example. Instruments within an orchestra were made and created and were given harmonic ranges to play with specific frequency bands. So, things like violins and violas will occupy the mid-range and the upper high range. In and out, like horns, your trumpets. What else have you got in an orchestra? Harps. They all have very, very different voicings, very different places across this frequency spectrum. Of course, bass typically sits in the low. It's just quite a fascinating thing, because it's this supporting element to music. It's this foundation, particularly in a contemporary style. That is a really good question, but I am going to get back to that, because I've got something to talk about first, and another song to play before we do that. So I'm just going to head back to my notes. And yeah, thank you for all your questions coming in as well. It's really... So the next thing I'm going to talk about really is being adaptable in the industry, I suppose, and more so the importance in the deep end. Now this is quite a broad subject, and again, to the people who are in the chat, I'm not sure exactly who is watching, but whether you are looking at pursuing a career in the music industry and haven't yet started down, already working in the music industry, but perhaps what you're doing isn't, you're not exactly sure that it's what you want to be doing. Perhaps you feel that you want to change what it is you do. This might be for you. So obviously it goes without saying that it is a crazy time, as well as many other industries, and we're not really sure, at least more knowledgeable people on the subject like Ash, who just spoke before me, will probably have potentially some idea of how things are looking at the moment. But personally, I'm not sure what the industry is going to look like when we emerge from. But I guess this is a prime example at times like this of when people have, I think, take this very live stream, for instance. Like, had we been under normal circumstances, perhaps this talk may have been hosted in person. You guys may have been able to come to a physical venue, etc., mingle, network, whatever, hang out. But however, we've had to adapt to the situation by doing things over live stream, and you will have seen many bands do this over the last several months as well, taking that leap further into the online. No other way really to reach people at the moment, but that is by the by. We won't dwell on this subject too long, but I do think it's important to know that this is a prime example of when people are learning to adapt, and perhaps if you are trying to pursue something in particular, this is something that you should consider. Let me just check right here. Yeah, so, actually, but at the moment, people are thinking ahead and doing things like this. Obviously we do what we do for the love of it, so it's all well and good talking about business. I don't really like talking about business because I try to keep the emphasis on the love of what I do. I find it very difficult to mix the love of my creative outlet, then comparing that to figures and statistics. I don't deal well doing that kind of thing. And I think saying that no pressure to go off on some new and crazy business venture. Don't start something absolutely next just for the sake of it. But I think what is important to take from this is that if an opportunity sort of presents itself that you're afraid of, apprehensive of, that you would, under normal circumstances, consider, maybe not, no, maybe like, it's a little bit too far out of my comfort zone. I think it's, really important to at least consider saying yes to some of these things, especially at the moment. Sorry, I'm reading my notes, which I'm not sure is considered professional, but it is what it is. So as I was saying, I don't really like talking about the industry. What I do as a creative, but naturally, if you are a music maker, you're going to want to get your music heard by people, and the only way to do that is to kind of experiment with ways of getting your music out there, and again, doing something new, trying something new, and learning to adapt to this current environment that we're in. And I guess a bit of context behind this is the fact that the bass guitar, is a guitarist. I've been playing guitar for 16 years, and I'm also a songwriter. And these are the things I do, I think, above anything but myself as, at least up until perhaps more recently, like days like today, for example, where I've been asked to do something as a bass player. And I'm totally fine with that. I'm totally fine with being called a bass player. But it is certainly not my first instrument. I am not a classically trained, traditional bass player that can do all the funk and soul chops. So if you're a bass player in the audience who's gone to college or university university, there is a very high chance that you are perhaps more qualified than I am to be talking about these things. But I thought I'd give you, just expand a little bit on my background. I did mention earlier that I started playing bass in a band when I was 19. I played for a band called Nicosia, and through playing with this band, opportunities to go and play music, up and down the country, play shows for the first time with other bands, start talking to people, starting to get to know the music scene a little bit, and eventually through the UK tech metal scene, who are, a wonderful, big-hearted family of people who really care about what they do and are passionate about the music and the people that are involved in that scene. So, through getting to know these people, through playing with Nicosia, I was offered to audition to play for Chris Shyman, who is a guitar extraordinaire from the United States, and he's a very swell guy. But for me, playing in a smaller hometown-sized band to then playing with an international guy, I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then so on and so forth. I played with Chris, also with a good friend of mine, a drummer, Arnaud Verrier, who is the drummer of Uneven Structure. And then through playing with Chris, I was invited to fill in for Uneven Structure playing bass on a tour. And it's still quite crazy to me today that I set out on my guitar player and I've done whatever it is that I've done within the music industry on an instrument that's not my first instrument. I wasn't, at least up until the last couple of years, the most confident or comfortable with this instrument. Obviously, I had a certain amount of guitar playing ability to back up the bass playing, but all this came from me saying yes to playing in a band just because I had a 5-string bass. I wasn't a bass player. I wasn't a 5-string bass player. I wasn't someone who could get up and instantly just play all the right notes and do all that kind of stuff. I had to work. I was really, really blessed and lucky enough to be offered that opportunity to sort of to grow and learn. So yeah, I guess that's just what I say when it comes to being adaptable, and why you should say yes to things, why you should throw yourself in the deep end, because you really don't know where it will take you. And I think that is the most exciting thing about all of this. Even at the moment, like it does seem, if you are wanting to get started on a career in the music industry, or you are indeed wanting to continue your career in the music industry, now is, but just be aware of these things. Don't be afraid to say yes is my main advice. So I'll leave the floor bass real quick. Actually, while I do that, I'm going to unplug so I don't destroy all of your ears. Oopsie daisy. I'm going to put that there. Alright, we're getting a happy days. I'm actually going to steal the strap from this one. There we go. Oh, lovely. I'll make sure we're in tune. So, I don't know, after that anecdote, I thought I'd play you a Shyman song, a Chris Shyman track. By the way, I'm not sure how the stream is doing for playing. If you guys are, I'm also streaming the actual playing of the songs on my Twitch channel. So you're more than welcome to head over to my Twitch channel, which is twitch.com/Sir_Borlius, K-A-L-L-I-U-S. If you are having troubles with the stream and any kind of audio, you can YouTube for the fun stuff, the talking stuff. So, let me load up this song. This one's quite a long one, so that's why I suggested that, but I do hope you enjoy. And while I'm playing this, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and I'll answer some more questions when we're done. Okie dokie then. Here we go. Let's make sure we are in tune first, however. These strings are infinitely older than the ones on the other bass. Right, I'm going to mute the mic and we'll get playing this track. Damn those fade outs. Jeez. Yeah. Lovely stuff. So that was Stygian Path from Mr. Chris Shyman, which is still playing apparently. Why are you not stopping? Let's press the stop button. There we go. Lovely. Oh, okay, so we're just going to check the chat real quick, see if there's any questions after that. No, I think we're all... So, if you are encountering any audio issues in that, you can watch the Songs Twitch channel, which is totally fine. I'll put this down for now, and we will get on to our next subject when I finish drinking this delicious coffee. Oh, where are my notes? Okay, so I wanted to talk after that a little bit about bass in songwriting, because I think the bass playing in the Shyman material is actually the uneven structure material, mainly because it comes from a different area, I suppose. The players that Chris got on his record were dudes like Amos Williams from Tesseract and Chris Maresh from Intronaut. I'm not sure. Chris Maresh, who's a brilliant bass player, who I can't remember who he plays for. Awful. They are more traditional bass players. They definitely play styles which come from a more fundamental area of the bass language, whereas what I tried to do with the uneven structure material was adapt picking parts to fingerstyle parts, like as I was speaking about previously. So it's certainly a different aspect, and for that reason I definitely needed to my tone and kind of focus on playing bass more as how it's played in a traditional context. Within that kind of, in heavier styles, I think you can afford to be a bit more experimental, do stuff that's a little bit more outside the box. With this, it just needed that tight drum and bass groove. So it was a really interesting aspect. I'm just going to answer that real quick. Interesting. Would you be able to advise on your bass setup in general and how you assess the components of that for home versus touring? Yes, I can. I've used a myriad of different setups and rigs over the years, so I can definitely give some pointers on what is best to record with versus tour with, and what kind of options you have as a bass player, as well as, you know, multi-instrumental towards people who play more than just one instrument. I think, let me just see how are we for time. We're pretty good. So we've got a 2-hour slot here, so we have about an hour to go. So I'm gonna answer this question, say a little bit more about bass within songwriting and arrangement, and then we'll do another song, do some questions, and then I think we'll wrap things up. So obviously, as I was explaining before, bass traditionally occupies the low end of music. Contemporary setting, it can be very, very versatile. I guess your fundamental things to focus on with bass is the rhythm and the melody, because you know, as someone who occupies the low end, you can choose to accentuate the rhythm of a drummer or percussionist or any kind of percussive rhythm that is going on within an arrangement. You can choose to highlight and accentuate that, supporting other instruments, if that makes sense. So I suppose a good example would be, let's grab a bass. If you just had like a 4 to the floor drum groove, like a dum, it's more of a swing. So okay, so do ga do ga. You got your 4 to the floor. You can, you know, with a bass, you can kind of, as a principle, are hitting, and I'd say more so well, I guess in every genre, it's good for a kick drum of a drum kit and a bass guitar to be locking. When it comes to breakdowns and syncopated rhythms, it's very good for the guitar, bass, and drums all to be locking in on particular rhythm. But of course, you can deviate from this, and that's kind of the good thing about being a bass player, is that you can, and if you choose to, it comes across as, or can come across, infinitely more flavorful. As a, I don't know, as opposed to let me just think of a good example real quick. To the whole drum kit thing, if you had, you know, a drum groove that was just a 4 to the floor, like a doom, yeah, doom, doom, yeah, something like that, you know, your bass line could be like, plug in and turn my bass on. That would be advisable. So you could do focus on and it all depends on, I guess, the dynamics of the piece you're playing, because if you're playing just a groove that's like got no other instrument, bass and drums within this arrangement that you're playing, you are going to want to exercise some lower dynamics perhaps. So maybe moving back towards the bridge, and you're going to want to focus on your note frequency as well. So if there's not a lot of harmonic information in your arrangement, you aren't necessarily going to, if we've just got a drum groove going on, you're not going to want to be like you know, it's not like, you're not going to overplay. You know, if there's a simple drum beat or drum groove, you're going to be like, and you know, the more the texture builds, the more you can decide what instruments to pull the harmonic information from. So say you have a strings line that's going over the top of a guitar riff. Now, typically as a bass player, you've been locking in with your guitars and you've been playing this riff solidly, and all of a sudden you've got a different comes in. You can really choose to highlight that, and you can break away. And because you're occupying the low frequencies, it's like you're there, but you're not there. So when you shift or do a counterpoint or reharmonize something, people will hear it. It's happened. And I think that is fundamentally the coolest part about the instrument, is the fact that you can break away from for a bit more flavor. Again, like I said, this is an absolutely massive subject, and it is quite difficult to really cover everything with this. But I guess that's a little bit of an insight. Is just if I have any advice for someone who's right to make better bass parts, it's just listen to everything. You know, decide what you want to extrapolate your rhythmic information from, and then decide what part information from. Like I said, in metal, if you are following guitar riff, a guitar riff, and all of a sudden, you know, another arrangement element comes in, be it a synth or a drum fill, you can choose to accentuate that. And, you know, say particularly if there's quite a musical drum fill with toms and stuff, when you've just been following the guitar rhythm and the guitar's just playing some big, like a big chords or something, you can be like a so many you know, I'll particularly show you guys, but I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. I do hope. But yes, I'm going to leave the subject open to any more questions. So if you do have some really specific questions about writing bass for contemporary music, any music, like I said, bass player, there's a high chance you're more qualified than I am to be talking about this. However, I like to think certain ways about writing parts, about approaching bass, and doing all this stuff. So this isn't to teach you the right way or to say that this is absolutely the way you must do things, but to perhaps give you a bit of context and direction if this is something you want to give a go. Yeah, those are absolutely some tips. So let me go back to the old notes. And yeah, I guess when it comes back to metal, this is another reason why stuff like the thumping, the slap techniques, why they are really good to accentuate this genre, because it's so much attack, so much punch, so much high dynamic range in this style of music, that having a technique that is just like super percussive really can add an interesting thing, an interesting element. Yeah, it's certainly easier to show you than to talk about it. So in a minute, I'm going to play one of my unreleased songs. It's just a demo at the moment, but I very much like to show you, because this is perhaps the best way that I have decided to incorporate my bass playing into my own songs, into my own compositions, and how I have gone about writing these bass parts. Let me make sure I've just covered everything. I think we're pretty good there. So I'm going to play a song, and then I'm going to come back to this question on a bit of nerdy stuff after this song, and then we'll do some final questions, and I think we'll think about wrapping things up. Once again, if you are having any issues with audio, particularly just the song audio, I know it's quite difficult at the moment for me to get this over to you guys, but these songs are streaming live on Twitch, so please jump over to my Twitch account if you are having troubles with YouTube. You can watch the songs without any interruption. This next song is called Contact. I'm going to tune down. This song is in drop F sharp, which is always fun. It's got an F sharp and a C sharp, and then half step tuning beyond that. There we go. I need to steal my strap back from the other bass. This is the problem when you only have one bass, or one bass strap, as I currently do. It's a terrible, terrible situation to be in. Lovely. Contact. Alright, so that was a new song. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me take this off. And we're going to do a few more bits. And then we're going to call it a day. Lovely. Just while that little ambient outro. Lovely. Okay, so we were going to talk a little tech, were we not? Love that song. Thank you very much, Chris Fry. That's really nice. Thank you. And getting it out to all of you people. That would be lovely. For anyone here, the performance is much clearer on the Twitch. Thank you very much, Danny, for putting the actual Twitch in the chat. That's awesome of you. Bloody legend. Okay, so the lounge bar asked just before that song, advise on your bass setup, assess the components of that for home versus touring. Now these are certainly very different things, the home and the touring for sure. I'd say when I'm home, I'm recording bass for my own demos, my own music, and therefore I use significantly. I don't have a massive bass amp or a massive bass pedal board, all of this kind of stuff. I'm very much a plug-in and play kind of my bass processing within my DAW. So it will be a lot of, and that's typically because within metal music production, the bass guitar needs a lot of processing to make it sit right with the other instruments, and it does have a specific sound and frequencies, characteristics it needs to have. And I think the best way to maintain control over that, unless you have very, very expensive equipment and have carved out your own sound, and you have state-of-the-art microphones and soundproof rooms, unless all of those conditions are met, I wouldn't necessarily recommend using huge bass rigs and lots of equipment at home. I think it's very easy to get your hands on some form of bass equipment. Like there are so many amp manufacturers out there who have software for simulating the sound of bass amps and cabs and microphones, and the technology is getting incredible. So there is no need necessarily to go spending hella money on a massive expensive bass rig. But what I would say is important is to have a nice bit of wood with fresh strings, please. Fresh strings are so essential to get the bass sound that I think if you're a bass, particularly within this genre, fresh strings are like 50% of the sound. And you can hear that on any bass that you use, more so than guitar, because they're simply bigger. It's higher output. So more of the sound is going to depend on how clean and new and brand spanky your strings sound. So with that being said, live is a very different story, because I guess I have a certain amount of criteria to fill for me when it comes to picking equipment for a tour or for a show or for any kind of live thing. And those requirements are normally, can the band I'm playing with or for get their hands on bass equipment for me? Any companies that they work with, that they can get their hands on some equipment, so wherever we're going, we can get to the venue and there is equipment already there. If that's not a possibility, if you can't use in-house stuff, or there's no backline company or anything like that, I'll travel as light as possible, particularly if a band is paying you to do a show. I find it's best to make life easiest for those people that are actually flying you out and trying to get you to do the thing. So traveling light, using a portable rig that gets the sound that you would like, but isn't going to cost an absolutely ridiculous fortune on luggage. You know, flying with something that's just crazy to fly, like an extra 3 flight cases of amps and cabs. No, that would be crazy. So I guess I can be a little bit more specific with the equipment that I use. I'm going to get some of it now, actually. Excuse me. Okay. It's going to bring across a couple of articles. I'm really sorry, there's some knocking going on outside. Someone's hammering something and it's making a terrible racket. So, first of all, this is something I use quite frequently, is the Line 6 Stomp. Now, it's the same preamp and amp modelling technology as they have in their full-size Helix floorboards. You've probably seen those. Whereas to travel with a full-size floorboard of any description, especially if you have, you know, like if you have to fly or travel, you've got, you know, let's say, for example, all of your instruments in it, or, you know, it doesn't even necessarily have to be flights. I know I'm talking specifically about flights here, but that's just what I so happen to have had to deal with, is finding equipment that's suitable for flying. But this is certainly indeed if you're just travelling in a car, more so, in fact, if you're travelling in a car with musicians to play shows or do anything like that, you are going to have limited space. And if a lot of that space is taken up by the people or the drum kit or the other instruments, it's good to not have to factor in ridiculously large bass and guitar rigs as well. So something like this that I just dropped on the floor, something like this is fantastic, and that's actually part of the product demonstration, in which I drop it on the floor just to show you exactly how damage proof this thing is and why it's an essential buy for being on the road. It's your basic thing, you know. It comes with a split, you know, like a channel split, so processing bass, particularly metal bass, where I think the technique is to split your signal off, have a kind of clean amp sound on one side, and then generate a grittier, more distorted sound on the other channel. A load of effects, you know, you can add your compression and EQ to this kind of thing. So, you know, it does everything, and it, you know, there is a high chance that your front of house guy is going for the processing of your bass as well. Sometimes you will work with sound engineers who will even just ask you for your straight DI. You know, I think they're the funniest instances when you're at a show and you see a musician get up on stage and they've, particularly a bass player, if they've got a lot of bass equipment, unnecessary stuff perhaps, let's say if they've got an enormous pedal board where only 2 of the pedals are actual functioning stuff, you know, or the opposite to that. Let's say if a guy's got a you know, a very specific bass sound, but a sound engineer you know, can always say, like, no, I just need your DI, mate. You know, it's not an issue. I find it quite funny when you go out of the way to do these kind of things, whereas in fact, you know, your sound engineer was prepared to do it all along. So interesting thing. But I think if you are, more often than not, if you have spent time crafting a sound and you are particular about that sound, then there's no reason that you shouldn't use that sound, and a sound engineer should absolutely adapt to you within reason if there's a certain way that you want your instrument. So yeah, this is just one example of something I would use on the road. It's perfectly acceptable to use at home. I actually do use it for reamping at home. I will record dry guitar DI sound interface to go into this live set a guitar tone, feed it back into my DAW and re-record a dry DI signal, and also have like an amp signal as well, I did say we were going to get a little bit nerdy, so this is certainly that point. But I left it all to... There we are. But yes, good bit of kit. Also, I have a couple of pedals here from Dark Glass Electronics as well. These are fantastic pedals. They are definitely more bespoke. There is a compressor and a distortion pedal. You see the little blue stickers of settings from previous tours that I no longer use. They're definitely more bespoke equipment. Oh, I think we've got an Apple software update I've just seen has popped up. That's going to be very delayed. So yeah, they're just examples of more bespoke bass equipment that I would use. And again, a lot of this stuff is applicable instances. You know, you will have your rig, which is interchangeable. It can be something that exists in a live setting, and it can also be something that utilizes at home. You utilize at home, but I do genuinely find that it is make things as uncomplicated as they can be, because things can always go wrong, as we have proven with technology time and time again. Things will always go wrong, things do go wrong, and you need to make sure that if you're in a time crunch situation and you have a technical issue, you can identify that issue as quick as possible, particularly when you're midway through a set and you're in a very time critical scenario. So yeah, that's my philosophy behind equipment. Is just don't overcomplicate it, particularly when it comes to bass, is because it simply does not need the overcomplication at all. It just needs, your own sound, do your own thing with whatever equipment you deem fit. But if you are quite a cut and dry guy, let's say, for example, you have a metal gig, surprise, surprise, you would potentially only for that gig need one bass and one pedal. And that is the kind of joys of it, really. Obviously, you've got the more experimental guys out here that are doing... So I've just seen this come up on chat. You'll be Apple products later. I am so glad about that. I wish you good Apple updating. Where was I? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, guys. If I'm honest, that's definitely my philosophy behind setups. What else have we covered? We've covered a little bit about advanced bass technique, which I'm happy to go over more. I know it was such a relatively short space of time. I've played songs, I've covered a lot of stuff, but particularly when it comes to the technique stuff, please do feel free to message me on social media. If you need any help, let's say even, for example, deciding on some gear, if you want pointers on equipment to buy, or you want pointers on technique, if you want to go over more thumb and the slap and all that kind of stuff, or if you have music that you're desperately trying to write a bass part for but you just can't seem to, then I would be more than willing to help. So please do reach out, contact me. And I think that's pretty much that. There was something else I wanted to cover, but I can't see it right now. To wrap up, when it comes to the being adaptable in the industry, like I was talking about before with the whole spiel about saying yes to things and throwing yourself in the deep end, I think it's important to remember that, people do want to help you. People do want to see you succeed. If you are passionate about what you do and you're, a nice person, someone with, like I said, if you're passionate about what you do, you will naturally find the right people. And for me, these people are the people in the UK music scene. The majority of people I've met through particularly the tech metal scene, have just been fantastic people. And I think obviously at the end of the day, it is an industry, it is a business, and you should keep your wits about you when making decisions or trusting people. Like I've definitely had a few run-ins with people who didn't have my best interests at heart, and that's totally fine because you can do that. But as a whole, when it comes to throwing yourself in the deep end, really just remember that there are people out there to help you. People do want to see you succeed, and people are just as passionate about you, and it's all about finding those people. So it looks like there's one more question. Further questions? Elaborate on where people can find you for lessons in general and in what capacity. So I do lessons. It's very relaxed. I take people on a kind of one-to-one basis. It's not some yes, I'm absolutely have been and am open to teaching. So you can find me on Facebook, Matt Ball Musician, or feel free to message me on my personal Facebook, Matt Ball, as well. I know there's not that many of you on here, so yes, absolutely feel free to contact me personally. Or you can grab me on Instagram, if that's your kind of thing. Actually can't remember my Instagram handle. So, and tell you, what is it? What's his Instagram? That's it. It's Matt Ball Music. Surprise, surprise. All one word, lowercase. Matt Ball Music. So yes, if you do need any help with anything, please contact me. If you want lessons, please contact me. Check out my bands or the bands that I play for, the people whose music I played for you today. I have my own music as well, so by all means go and check that out, and there should be some more of that coming out next year, featuring some lovely people who are good industry do. Yes, this has been really fun. I hope you've learnt something. I hope some of what I said made sense. And yes, like I said, if there's anything else you want to ask, please feel free. So I'll stick around for a sec, but I think we should bring this to a close now. So I'll wait for the stream to go off.